Kevin Mitnick is one of the world's most famous hackers, and his real talent was never the computer, it was never tech. So, what was his skill? How did he become a world class hacker without knowing tech? And what does that mean for us as business owners? What is the moral to this story, and why am I telling it? This is a good one. I want you guys to pull up a chair, get yourself a cup of coffee, cup of tea, settle on in because I'm going to tell you a story today. Welcome to Rise and Shine, your daily business tech boost with me, Charly Leetham. If you're a small business owner looking to simplify technology and get real, actionable advice from someone with 35 years of IT experience, you're in the right place. Every episode, I'll dive into tools and systems like email, CRM, marketing and tracking, and I'll break them down into bite-sized tips you can use straight away. Your time is valuable, so let's get straight to the point. It's time to work smarter, not harder. Rise and shine, each a dose of business tech inspiration with me, Charly Leetham. No idea what episode number I'm up to. It is Firewall Friday. And in keeping with that theme, I want to talk about one of the world's most famous hackers, as I said in my intro. I want to talk about what that means for us as business owners. So it's going to be a fable, or the moral to this story at the end of all of it. What I want to do, though, is rather than just sort of talk very dustily about, what he did and do that, I want to tell the story. I want to tell Kevin Mitnick's story as well as I can, explain what he did, how he got to where he got to, and what that means for us as business owners at the end of it. So stay tuned. Pull up a chair, get yourself a cup of coffee, cup of tea, beverage of your choice, and let me tell you this story about one of the world's most famous hackers. Kevin Mitnick's illustrious career started out as a 12-year-old in Los Angeles, and he worked out how to ride the buses for free. Now, that might not sound like a big thing, but for a 12-year-old back in the early 1970s, late 1970s, I'm sure it is quite exciting. How did he do it, though? Because, it's not like today where we get on a bus and we tap on with our card and we tap off with our card, or, throw money into it. The bus systems in Los Angeles use something called a transfer slip system. Now, it's really difficult for me to try and wrap my head around that because it's not a system I've worked with, and I had to look it up a little bit. A transfer slip is a ticket that lets you change buses mid-ticket or mid-trip, and the bus driver takes that ticket and punches it and says, yeah, it's valid for this day, this time, and this route, basically. And that you use that as you get on and off the buses. Well, Kevin wanted to be able to use those transfer slips and ride the buses for free. How did he do it? Well, he spoke to a bus driver and asked him where he could buy one of those really cool ticket punch systems. I need that for a school project. I'm doing a school project. I need one of those ticket punches. Where do I get one of those? They look really cool. And the bus driver says, over here, go and buy one over here. Now, this is something that's really well documented. I picked up a lot of this stuff by researching Kevin and finding information from his memoirs, and this seems to be really well documented in his memoirs. But for this to work, it wasn't just enough that he had the ticket punch. Kevin needed to have unused transfer slips to be able to punch them so that they were valid for that day and that route. That should not be easy to get, right? If you've got something that lets people onto the buses, you would think that there was a lot of security around the blank transfer slips. Well, it would appear that there wasn't, and Kevin found this out. Bus drivers used to discard partly used books in the bins behind the bus depots, which means all Kevin had to do was go dumpster diving, find one of these books, and there he had a bunch of unused transfer slips that he could then use for himself with that cool little punch that he got because the bus driver told him where he could get it. Once he had those two things, he could ride the buses for free anywhere in Los Angeles. It didn't require a computer. It didn't require anything to break in. It just required a kid who worked out what to say to the right person to hand him what he needed. The weak point in that system wasn't the machine, it was the people running it. Now, there's two weaknesses to that part, right? It's not just that the bus driver said, well, yeah, you can go and get a punch from here. It was the fact that there was no process around discarding the unused books. They got thrown in the bin where anyone could find them. Now, before I get into the rest of Kevin's career, I want to just talk about where he started, because where does a 12-year-old get the idea that he can do this? Well, it's really, I found it really interesting. I hope you guys find it really interesting. He was a kid who loved magic. Now, he was born in Los Angeles in 1963, and he spent a lot of his childhood bored and on his own. And that's where he fell in love with performing magic tricks, practicing each one until he had them down pat. But what really grabbed him, what really hooked him into the magic, it wasn't the trick itself. It wasn't learning the trick and getting that down perfect. It was watching rooms full of people taking genuine delight in being fooled. He later said that discovering that people enjoyed being deceived was the realization that shaped his life. So he worked out that there's something you could do with people and they would go, oh, you deceived me. How cool is that? I know, weird. Now, this is something that runs straight through everything he did in the rest of his career, from the bus punches, from the bus punch to the other things that he did, which I'm going to cover real soon. And that's because his real talent was never the tech or the computer, as I said, it was the people. Now, Kevin would be the reason most of us know the term social engineering. And social engineering is simply a way of getting access by working on the human side of the equation, not the technology side of the equation, or at least not the technology side, first of all. So from the bus trips, his free bus trips around Los Angeles, Kevin decided to try phone systems. What is better than free phone calls? And by that point, I'd imagine that the age of dial-up internet is coming into being. And man, could that get expensive. Speak to any of us that did dial-up in the early days, and we were being charged long-distance phone calls to get into our ISP. It could get expensive. So I understand the call of being able to get free phone calls. How did he do it? What did he do? Well, he would work out which phone company he wanted to target. And before he did anything else, he would do his homework on that company. He would learn things like the department names, procedures, intercompany jargon. He would go as far as finding manuals and printouts in the rubbish bins of the company offices. He wanted to sound like he genuinely worked there, and he did a lot of research to be able to sound like that. Once he was comfortable with that, he would ring the phone company posing as an insider. Maybe it was a technician, maybe it was just another department needing a hand. And on those calls, he'd give them a reason he needed something and then ask them for something. Maybe it was the phone number to a modem of an internal system that no one else knew, only internal people knew. Maybe it was changing a setting on a system that would allow him better access to that system. Maybe it was giving him the password to a system, and if that didn't work, maybe it was changing the password to a system to one that he knew. And he did all of this while sounding like it was routine work between colleagues. Now, that won him a whole heap of free phone calls anywhere, of course, but it also gave him access to private records and unlisted numbers of any of the customers, control of the switches to reroute or monitor lines, and the run of the company's internal systems itself. And all of that was done through the person on the end of the line, not clever electronics. Eventually it got to the electronics, but not initially. The access was given through people. Do you see a pattern here? Now, before I get into the moral of the story, let me just quickly run through what happened with the rest of Kevin's career, because I think it's fascinating. It might be a bit dusty by the time I get to the end of it, so I'll try to be quick through it. 1981, Kevin was arrested in connection with stealing Pacific Bell operating manuals. Because he was a juvenile, he was put on probation and nothing really came of it. 1982 to 1983, He broke into computer systems connected to the universities and the ARPANET networks. Now, it wasn't just phone systems anymore. He was now starting to explore the computer systems themselves. By the mid-1980s, Kevin had developed a reputation in hacker circles for obtaining software, operating system, source code, and technical documentations from major organizations. In 1987, he actually got arrested for stealing software from the Santa Cruz operation. He received probation for that in 1987 to 1988, and this is where it starts to get tenuous for him. He was involved in intrusions into Digital Equipment Corporation, DEC systems, and he copied proprietary software and source code. Now, at that point in 1988, he was actually convicted over that case, over the DEC case, and he was sentenced to about a year in prison, followed by supervised release. When he was released in 1989, he was required to comply with supervision conditions restricting computer use. Funny that, hey? This is where it gets a little sad. I guess it's sad. Maybe it's silly. I don't know how I feel about it. 1989 to 1991, investigators alleged continued unauthorized access to computer systems and violations of his release conditions. So by 1992, because now he's got people saying to him, you can't be using computers, and it sounds like he's still using computers. Sounds like he's still accessing technology when he really shouldn't be. 1992, probation and supervised release issues escalated terribly. A warrant was issued for his arrest, and when he failed to comply with the conditions, he went on the run. So he was on the run between 1992 and 1995. They call that his fugitive period. During that time, there were continued intrusions into major technology and telecommunication companies, including Motorola, Nokia, Sun Microsystems, and a number of others. I've just sort of picked the highlights there. The Motorola one in 1992 is probably one of the more notable exploits during this time, and I found it really interesting, and I want to discuss that one real quick. Kevin fell back onto the same social engineering techniques that rewarded him free phone calls as a teen. That same skill was then aimed at one of the biggest companies in the world, Motorola. Kevin was on the run and living in Denver under a false name at that point, but he wanted a mobile phone that the authorities could not trace. Let me say that one again because I really tripped over it. He was on the run. He was living under a false name. He was living in Denver, and he decided he wanted a mobile phone that the authorities could not trace. Cool. That meant he needed the source code that ran a Motorola MicroTac Ultra Light. Now, apparently that was one of the most advanced phones at the time. I certainly remember them, and it was probably one of the ones that was the harder ones to track. But he needed the source code so he could change the phone's identifying data. How does one go about getting source code to a proprietary system when you're on the run, living under a false name? Ring the company. He picked up the phone and he rang Motorola. He worked his way through the company by sounding like a colleague and had an employee finally send him the source code directly. That's right. One of the biggest tech companies in the world handed over its own source code because someone rang up, sounded like he belonged, and asked for it. Let's just think about that for a moment. Every technical defense money could buy was sitting right there, and none of it mattered because the whole attack walked straight past all of it through a person. It literally walked through the front door. Alrighty, look, I love that story. It's like, what were you thinking? Kevin Mitnick's story continues up to 1994. And I'm going to just finish all of this off for us. Christmas 1994, he broke into the home computer of Satsumu Shimamura. I hope I pronounced that correctly. A security expert. Shimamura took it personally and went after him and traced the intrusions with the phone company and FBI to a cellular site in Raleigh, North Carolina. Using radio direction finding techniques, Shimamura identified the exact apartment that Kevin was residing in. Kevin was arrested on the 15th of February 1995, found with cloned phones and false IDs. Now, there's a whole heap of things that at this point in the story, the legend starts to take over, and I can go around and try and separate what was true from what stuck. The memoirs are out there. Kevin's own memoirs are out there. He's written a couple of books. Go and find them if you're interested. But he was caught and he was arrested and jailed, and he served 5 years, banned from computers and phones for 3 years after his release. So for 8 years, he wasn't allowed to use computers and phones. Don't ask me how that worked. That's what they did. After that, though, he built Mitnick Security and became the chief hacking officer and part-time owner of KnowBe4, KNOWBE numeral 4, the company that trained staff not to fall for the very tricks that he had used. KnowBe4 was later taken private in a deal valued at about $4.6 million. And Mitnick has written several books, or wrote several books, before he passed away in July 2023. All right. Why have I spent so much time sharing this story? Well, firstly, I really hope it was interesting and entertaining. I kind of love these stories. I also love they take what they were doing and they turn it around and use it for good. I think that's cool. I think that's wonderful. But there is a moral to this story for us as business owners, and it's what I call the trust gap. Just like computer networks can have air gaps to protect them from outside networks, we have to also create trust gaps. You can spend a fortune on security software and still be one polite phone call away from handing over the keys to your kingdom. The trust gap asks you to remember that every technical defense you buy sits behind a person, and that person is where the attacker goes, not the firewall. That space between the software you paid for and the human who can be talked into opening the door in front of it is that trust gap. And it's the one gap no firewall and no air gap will ever close. It can only be closed by us, or it can only be opened and kept open by us as humans. And here it is. You can spend a fortune on security software and still be one polite phone call away from handing over the keys to your kingdom. Every technical defense you buy sits behind a person, and that person is where the attacker is going to go and not the firewall. That space between the software you paid for and the human who can be talked into opening the door in front of it is what I call the trust gap. And it is the one gap no firewall and no air gap will ever close. In a small business, that person is often you, which means you are not part of the defenses, you are the defense, and there is nobody behind you to catch what you miss. The person who answers the phones, opens the emails, or resets a password is where an attack like this actually lands. And Mitnick's own line was that social engineering bypasses all technologies, including firewalls. One thing that I think you guys can all do this week, and that's to think about who in your business could be talked into giving away something like a password, customer details, access to an account, and whether they would know to stop and check before they did. What's your trust gap like in your business? All right, guys, I really hope you enjoyed that story. Let me know if you want. There's a couple of others out there that I saw that I thought they'd be really cool to share and talk about what the implications for us as business owners are. I'd love to know what you're thinking. Leave comments wherever you're watching or listening to this episode. If it was useful, interesting, entertaining, something like that, please give the video a like and maybe share it with a friend. And if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell so you find out when I drop more content. And finally, If you need help with this sort of stuff, if you just need someone to bounce these things off of and say, where do you think my holes are? Or how can I handle this? Or what do you think about this? I'm a tech wrangler. I do this sort of thing for people all the time. Reach out to me, askcharlyleetham.com. You can book a free 30-minute breakthrough session. That's what I call them. Just go to askcharlyleetham.com and click the bright pink button in the top right-hand corner of my website. If you have already used your free breakthrough session and you still want to keep working with me, thank you so much. I'd love to work with you. Please do reach out. I have a number of packages. I have a number of ways of working with people, and I like to work out the best way for us to work together so it's a win-win situation. All right, guys, that's it for this week. I hope you've had a good Firewall Friday. Be safe, be secure, think about your trust gap and how you're going to keep that up and maintained. And I will see you on Monday for Mindset Monday. Bye. Hey there, thanks so much for tuning in to Rise and Shine, your daily business tech boost. I hope today's episode gave you some actionable insights that will make your business tech work smarter for you. If you found value, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other small business owners who could use a daily boost. For more tips, tools, and resources, visit www.askcharlyleetham.com. Until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and let's make tech simple together.